I just wanted to say, I'm meeting people, I know your faces, I don't know your names in half the cases, so when you see me and we say hello, tell me your name, or if you have your name tag on, I'll peek. I want to welcome any guests that we have today. Do we have any guests other than our speaker? We have a guest. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your family, where you live. You have 38 seconds.
Can I do it? 29?
29, you get an extra bagel.
Alan Ehrlich. I was a member years ago when they met in Voorhees.
Right,
And,
that is years ago.
Mike Perla convinced me to come back.
Great, great. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you live?
I live in Voorhees.
Okay, and you're retired or?
Retired for a lot of years already.
Okay, good. Sounds good to me. Anybody else? Guest?
My name is Ed Bender. I live in Centennial Mills.
Centennial Mills?
I was a member of South Florida prior to coming back. I was from here originally, moved to Florida for 15 years.
Okay, what are you retired?
Very much so.
What did you do in real life?
In real life, I ran a business that my son runs today. Equipment for New Jersey.
Okay, welcome. Okay, let's remember when we start breakfast to give a little extra time, and that's more than 3 seconds. I got it. Let's give the members who need a little extra help time to get to the tables and get their food. Okay. I'm going to ask Rich Dutkin to give our motzi today. If you guys know Rich, he hasn't been here in a while, so he's honored us with his presence today. And we're surely glad to see him. He had an illness. Okay, he fell. Rich, motzi, please.
Everybody have something to make a motzi on?
They will shortly. All right, I wanted to let you all know of a couple things that we passed at the last board meeting. We passed a new budget for the coming year, and the coming year starts September 1st. We passed a due structure and a breakfast charge. The due structure is going to remain the same at $42 a year, and we will be sending out notices. You'll probably get an email early in August, mid-August. If you'll bring your checks to the August meeting, that will be helpful, or you can mail it. Stan Schumas, our new treasurer, is going to be sending those out. So if you'd bring your checks for the August meeting, that'd be great. Keep in mind that dues need to be paid. The breakfast charge after, I don't know how many years, at least 10, at least since I've been in the club, and I think I'm around maybe close to 10 years now, has been $7. We're going to raise it to $8. I knew I would get a warm reception on that one.
I have to stand on the street corner and beg now.
Joel Hammets, we're going to take up a collection for Joel. Anyway, $8, not effective till the new year starts, which will be the September meeting. So you got one more meeting at 7. I still hope to see you in September. Otherwise, you'll hurt my feelings.
Hey, you guys elected him.
You did too, I think.
No, I abstained.
Will you impeach him? I'd like Ed Silver to come up for a minute, or if he would from his chair. We have a new member who is already a board member, but we'd like him to be a director, and we need approval for that. And It's Abe Furtis, who's been on the board, and he's going to be our new recording secretary because I can't write.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Breakfast is going up.
Good morning, gentlemen. For those of you who are not new, for the last several years, in combination with other men's clubs, we've had Eagles games which shared with another men's club. And we've had great turnouts. Last year was actually the best turnout. Anybody who was here last year at the Eagles games? It was a breakfast meeting because the game was in England. The other games that we saw were night games. Anyway, I may want to go through the process of trying to get another men's club to join with us at their facility to watch the Eagles game again, preferably the Dallas game. The games are at night unless they decide that they want to do something in the afternoon. But I don't want to do that unless I know that there's some interest. So if you think that you might be, there's no commitment, you're not obligated. But I just want to show of hands. If you think you'd be interested in participating, I'll go through the process. All right, I'll see what I can do.
Do you want to nominate Abe for his position? We need a vote on Abe. You want
do
me
it.
to do it? All right. So, as I said, we need a vote from the membership on Abe Furtis as a director, and his position will be recording secretary. All in favor, aye? Aye. Acclamation, proclamation, I think, or something like that. Yeah, I think the ayes have it. Thank you, Bob. We're looking for someone to help us with our website. I don't know if we have any web gurus or web designers here, or someone who thinks they might be. We're willing to give you a try. Anybody? I don't think we're asking about a lot of time. We're talking about maybe small changes to our website as we need them made. Does anybody have that talent? Don't all raise your hands. All right, we'll look for somebody maybe who has professional experience, and hopefully we can get them at a very reasonable price. I wanted to take a minute and tell you about the finalization of Yom HaShoah and the funds that we raised on Yom HaShoah. If you recall, for those of you who were there, you knew we were handing out candles as we've done every year. We pay for the candles, the club does. We ask our members who want to sponsor the cost of the candles, either a quarter case, a half case, a full case. I just want to mention some names. We have about a dozen people who helped us out with that and basically covered the full cost of all the candles. And you don't have to stand. Barry Foreman, Jerry Feldman, Stan Schumas, Ed Stein, Len Berman, Fred Berman, Steve Barsky, Bob Greenberg, Dick Knopf, Don Weisenstein, Sam Feigenbaum, Bob Levine. Thank you very much for helping with that. In addition to those monies, which totaled around $375, we collected $381 at the service that evening. And therefore, after deducting the cost of the candles, we contributed to JCRC $363, which they were very grateful for. And actually, either at the next meeting or the following meeting, someone will be here and we'll present them with a big facsimile type check. I also wanted to talk about law enforcement and give you a finalization of that we discussed at the last meeting. Thanks to Mike Perloff, who organizes it every year or two, and all the volunteers. We must have had 25 or 30 volunteers. So if you were there and volunteered, and even if you were not, give yourself a hand. Thank you. At the breakfast, we do a 50-50, and the proceeds of that were down a little bit this year. Actually, a couple of the winners donated their winnings back. So we had a total of about 400 net from that, and we actually dispersed at that breakfast $500, $250 to each of the charities, Hero Scholarship Fund and Goodwin Holocaust Museum and Education Center. In addition to that, at the last board meeting, we had some net income from the breakfast itself, from the charges to attend the breakfast, and from the sponsors. We have, I think, 6 or 7 sponsors. And we voted to donate another $250 each to the 2 charities, and they will also be here at one of the next 2 breakfasts to accept their checks. So the total for the 2 charities then would be $1,500 each. So, and I think we had a record attendance. I haven't been around forever like Mike Perloff, but I think we might have had a record attendance. I think we were close to 200, Mike, you think? Yeah. So over 200, somebody said? Okay. Abe Furtis, could you come up for a minute? You want to tell us about a American Treasure outing? Is that it? American Treasure? I think it's a joint outing with another group. And see if we have any interest, and you can...
Yes, hi. We are organizing a trip together with the Couples Club of JCC, and I think this might be the first time we do that, and I think it might be some...
We did also going to the Philadelphia Soul together.
Oh, okay, yeah, so I think it's very effective. It's a good crowd, Bernie. So it's the American Treasure Tour Museum, and it's in Oak, Pennsylvania. If anybody's gone to the outlets in Limerick, they're actually before that with the so it's a, you know, it's like a 40-mile ride, but it shouldn't be difficult to do that. What we are planning to do is do it September 19 on a Thursday, September 19, and it's going to be $12.50 to get into the museum. And the way the museum works is they put you in a tram, and they actually give you a tour of the whole museum in a tram. So it should be it should take about 2 hours. I think it will be really an enjoyable thing. Now, food, the tradition of the Couples Club is to have a lunch before that. So Bernie is I'm going to send you information on the whole thing on that. But it's you have an option of being there at 12 and have a group lunch, or you have the option of being there at 1:30 and take the tour in the museum. But Bernie's going to give me all the details on that. He's a good negotiator, so don't worry about it.
Can you give us just a thumbnail of what it is, American?
Yeah, it's basically a collection of kind of the history of the United States. You know, it's kind of anything that this guy could find, right? And yeah, go ahead, Bernie.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. This gentleman is very, very, very rich, and without mentioning his name, he owns everything. He owns all of Oaks, PA, and a bunch of other things. And over the years of being in business and being a neat guy, he's bought over 1,000 cars, which he has in Morgantown, which is also open. That's more miles away. And he put in this manufacturing plant for tires. It was a Goodyear, I think it was a Goodyear tire company. And he bought that whole building, and he stocked it with all his, I would say, unusual stuff, or crap. And if you go through it, you can see the Lit Brothers Christmas displays, clowns displays, organs. We got some brochures over there. I can show it to you, but it's unbelievable. I've been through it a couple of times, and I took my car club and a couple other clubs. It is fascinating. Then you can get out and walk around and touch and feel everything. He has more crap than I've ever seen anywhere. And everything he saved, he put in this museum. And it's just unusual. He has clown outfits, and organs, and movie theater, and he has a whole thing on Hollywood. His cars are magnificent. He has 1,000-some cars, every conceivable car you can imagine. And he's a very charming individual. He doesn't want to be mentioned his name because he doesn't want anyone to hound him. But I have never been through a museum like this. And I've been through it so many times with different clubs. It's a happening. It's a real happening. So I set up, it's $12.50 a person. The meals they have a restaurant around the corner they own, and it starts at $16 up to $21 for buffets and other stuff. And the food's great, so I'd like you all to go take a look at it. You can go on the internet, and it's called the American Treasure Tour in Oaks, PA, and you can see a lot of pictures of it. But I've never seen so much unusual stuff in my whole life. It makes every other museum minute compared to what he has done. So it's, you can spend a whole day up there, or 2 days even. Any questions I can answer, or I can help you decide?
Send us an email.
No, so I'll send
Thank you.
an email on the information. And again, like I said, it's September 19th, 12 o'clock will be lunch if you want to participate, and that's going to be, you pay your own. We're not going to collect money for that. The only thing we're collecting is the $12.50, and there's going to be, you send it directly to Bernie. So it'll be just one person collecting the money. Again, the more people, I think Bernie can negotiate a cheaper rate. So, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. At the last meeting, we had put together a couple packets of our cards that we have. They're blank cards, they're pre-stamped. They've got a nice hand. These happen to have a nice hand on the wall in Israel, Jerusalem. These are our mitzvah cards that can be used for, pretty much any purpose. I have 2 packs left. We normally sell them for $5. There's 3 in these packs. They're pre-stamped. They're $10. See me if you want one of them. I think I had 6 of them. There's 2 left. Let's see. Where are we? Don Weisenstein, our fantasy football guru.
We are about to embark, I believe it's on our 6th season, maybe even more than that, but we started a number of years back with 8 teams and 10 people, and now we're expanding to 14 teams, and we'll have close to 30 people involved with our league this year. The draft is right here after our next meeting, August 25th. Even if you're not involved with fantasy football, if you want to observe it, you're welcome to join us. I would just ask that if you do, make sure you let the people that are drafting have the seats so that they can get through the draft as quickly as possible. I have a waiting list for next year. If you're interested in still getting involved, let me know and I'll add you to the waiting list. Again, we are up to 14 teams and we will not go beyond 14. If we get enough interest from other people, I'll form a second league. And that way everybody could be involved. On a side here, there's no cost whatsoever to the South Jersey Men's Club for this. The total cost is borne by those people that are participating. And the final thing before any questions, I want to welcome my newest co-owner who has accepted an invitation to join my team. Dave Wynn is now a co-owner of my team, and we look forward to his expertise or lack thereof. He'll fit right in if it's the lack thereof. So, any questions on fantasy football?
I suggest that nobody draft Golden Tate.
Yeah, there's a number of players already that are having a few issues, so. Suspended 4 weeks. Yeah, Tate was suspended for 4 weeks, so.
I hadn't heard that one.
Mike.
I'd like to point something out. The guy who wins is usually the most expert at choosing people who won't get injured. That's it.
Yeah, it's not, you don't need skill, you need luck. Is far more, evidence of that. Mike was way down in the standings last year, and to show it takes really luck and no skill, he moved up to what, 2nd or 3rd. So, thank you.
Thanks, Don. So we have a speaker here today who's probably come the longest distance of any speaker we've ever had here. And I would tell you who he was, but I still can't pronounce it. Oh, all right, one more. I'm sorry. I did forget.
Sorry about this. Is important. No, seriously. We're gonna go for a moment from fantasy to reality. We're gonna go from fun museums to meaningful museums. Anybody been to Auschwitz? Handful of people. How about if Auschwitz came to your doorstep? Would you be interested? For the first time ever, the government of Poland has allowed artifacts out of Auschwitz to come to North America. There's an exhibit in New York City at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, which is the museum down by the Battery by the World Trade Center, that's going to be there for only 6 months. This is a project that was put together by the Polish government, the Israeli government, Yad Vashem, and for some bizarre reason, a Spanish company. The exhibit opened in Madrid, where it was open for 6 months to capacity crowds. It came to New York on May 8th, which you may remember is VE Day. It will be here for 6 months. It'll close up in early January and move to the West Coast. So I was thinking you guys might be interested to go individually. You might be interested to go as a group for somebody who wants to organize that kind of thing. So back a couple months ago when this first opened and there were rave reviews in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, I'm sitting with my wife and I'm saying, no, this is important, this is important. And she said, yeah, it is. And Jewish kids ought to go. And I said, yeah, they should. And she said, and you're going to pay for it. And we are. We're going to send every Jewish kid here in southern New Jersey, from bar mitzvah age up to through high school, who wants to go. So if you have grandchildren, if you have children and grandchildren, encourage them. They will be contacted through BBYO or through their synagogues, and we will pay for every Jewish kid who wants to go. So far, we have 150 kids, and the word has just gotten out. And we will, whatever it takes, we will take care of it. So spread the word, but as I say, you yourself may want to go if you can want to organize a trip. The tickets are limited. It closes in January. Dave?
Why did you mention that to Sharon Siegel? She has trips all over the place, and maybe next time she sends out the brochure.
That's for the JCC. She is with, it's going out through the Holocaust Museum downstairs, and it's going out through BBYO.
Yeah, but they actually run trips.
Well, I'll leave that to them. We're kind of...
Yeah, but they have to know the information.
Yeah, okay. I'll pass it along, our JCC people. I'll have my wife mention it too. So again, encourage your children or grandchildren. As I said, it's going to be limited, it's going to be tight, but do encourage them to go, and I do encourage you to go as well.
Would it be possible for us to send an email to our members with the information?
Sure, well, the point is to, they should be aware they'll be contacted through their synagogues, or if the kids are through in BBYO, they'll be contacted through BBYO. But maybe an encouragement from you to go. They'll be on a Sunday. Politz is sending a bus full on a Thursday, the Thursday of Teachers Convention. And the synagogues will be going, it appears, on Sunday, December 8th. So, yeah, can send out...
Synagogues are organizing the transportation?
That is being organized through the Holocaust Education Center and Helen Kirschbaum.
Oh.
She is organizing it.
All right.
And she's on top of it. But I wanted you guys to know, because you may be wanting to organize your own thing.
All right, if I can get the information from you in an email, I'll disperse it to the membership. Okay, thank you. That's great. David Schwartz, would you like to introduce our speaker today who's come to us from such a distance?
Good morning. Arkady Hasidovich is here this morning. Please welcome him. I'm going to use the word emissary. I hope it's all right. He and his family came from Israel in August last year, wife and 2 children, and he has a wonderful tale to tell, and some of you heard him at the law enforcement breakfast. So please welcome Arkady. Thank you.
Well, thank you for such a warm welcome. Boker Tov, good morning. My name is Arkady Hasidovich, and I'm the emissary from Israel here in the southern New Jersey Jewish community. Emissary from Israel, in Hebrew it's called Shaliach. Shaliach, and I have to tell you that if I had a shekel, 1 shekel for every time that I was mistaken for a mashgiach, I would be a very wealthy shaliach. So mashgiach, of course, is a person who makes sure that the food is kosher. And I go to all these events and I schmooze, and schmoozing is usually near the food. So it kind of makes sense that I'm mashgiach. So yes, that was quite an experience for me. So shaliach. There was no shaliach in this community for many, many years, for 17 years actually. Before that, you had a very magnificent legacy of shlichim from the 70s. I actually researched into that. But I'm the first shaliach after 17 years, and nobody really knows what shaliach does. So people keep asking me, what is your job description? And I'm jokingly saying that my job description is to create a job description for myself and for the future shlichim, and that's what I've been doing for the last year. Now in August I will be 1 year here, and I have 1 or 2 more years to go. And then I go back to Israel, of course, with my family, and as it was mentioned, I'm here with my wife and 2 kids. They go to Kelman, and as you might judge by my unpronounceable name, Arkady, well, Hasidovich is really a bit easier because it's Hasid, but Arkady is really tough on the Americans, so in Starbucks I'm Eric. It just makes it easier for them to pronounce it. So, and you can also tell maybe by my accent, I wasn't born in Israel. I've been living in Israel for 30 years, but I wasn't born in Israel. Any wild guesses where I was born? Well, I'll challenge you a little bit that. It's a country that doesn't exist anymore. Ukraine still exists?
USSR.
USSR, right. Well, in that age group, it's an easy question. When I ask that kids, no, that's just Russia is the fire. Yes, I was born in Soviet Union, in Moscow. And I came to Israel when I was 15 in 1990, almost 30 years ago, with my family, of course. And it's interesting so I was born in a diaspora outside of Israel, just like you did, or I know that there are also some Israelis here, but the majority. So it's different experiences, this diaspora and my diaspora. First of all, the generation of my grandparents, just like the generation of your grandparents, they were probably religious, they spoke Hebrew, they knew how to daven, they separated dishes, the whole Jewish spiel. The generation of my parents, my mom and dad, they know nothing about Judaism. You probably know that because the religion was forbidden in the Soviet Union, any kind of religion, but for Jews there's always a special treatment. So my grandparents, they were afraid to pass any kind of knowledge about Judaism, no Hebrew, no Shabbat, no any kind of religious or even the language. Now, they were so afraid, so the generation of my parents didn't know anything, and by that effect, me neither. So if not for the state of Israel, and if not for, to a large extent, the efforts of the Jewish American people with all these movements to liberate the Soviet Jews, I think my generation would be the last generation of Jews in Russia, in Soviet Union. And we're talking about 2 million, right? So God bless there is Israel, that I really consider it to be a safe space for Jews, but not only, but it definitely saved about 1 million Jews who came to Israel. They saved them in terms of, not physically of course, spiritually. So, with that notion, when Israel for me, it's not just a safe haven. I mean, of course, for all of us, it's you mentioned Holocaust, but for me, it's much more than that. For me, it's also a source of inspiration. I mean, think about it. Israel is a high-tech and low-key. High-tech, you all know about high-tech, you all know about the startup nation, of course, you heard about that, but it's not only high-tech, it's also that sense of innovation for the Israelis. I mean, even I myself, before I came here, I thought of a startup, and I thought, what should I do? Do I go to and establish this startup, or do I go on this experience? So I voted for this, but when I come back, maybe I'll open a startup. So it's just ingrained in the Israeli culture. But it's also low-key. It's not only high-tech, it's low-key. Very much to the same extent as here in southern New Jersey. Of course, even if compared with northern New Jersey, this is a very low-key community, so I feel really at home here. But in Israel, for those who visit, it's very, very laid back. Israel is also black and white. We are very, tachlis? We are very to the point. So black and white figuratively speaking, we have black Jews, we have white Jews, we have brown Jews, we have Asian Jews. My wife is an Asian Jew. So it's black and white, but we're also very tachlis. And Israel is also, how shall I put it? Well, it's an inspiration for me. Now, when we got to Israel in 1990, I was a kid. I was 15 years old, and I graduated from high school, and then the military. I got drafted to the military. Of course, as you all know, in Israel, the military is 3 years mandatory service for boys, 2 years for young women. And, you know, I'm being drafted to the military, but it's a completely different experience, I think, from many other militaries. First of all, Israelis, even in this cynical day and age, they still consider military service as something very honorable. Not only the soldiers themselves, but the general public too. For instance, if there's a politician or an artist who makes an unpopular remark, and he happens, in rare cases, didn't serve in the military, they would dismiss him. He would say, why he doesn't even talk? I mean, he didn't even serve in the military. So that kind of pride in the service, I think it's to a much extent unique to Israel. I know that many people here in America also value service very much, but in Israel it's across the board. The Israeli military is also a great mixer. I mean, think about me, a new immigrant from a different country, still with my accent. I would say I got drafted 4 years after we got to Israel. And I'm already, after a year and a half service in the military, I'm already commanding over kids who were born and raised in Israel and don't speak with an accent. And that's a very typical thing. So it's a great mixer, and you can see people from all layers of the society condensed into one place, and it doesn't really matter where you come from. I even see it now because I served 3 years, but then I continue to serve in the reserve duty. Once a year I go. I'm a little bit beyond the age of the reserve duty, but I keep volunteering anyway. And you see people from all walks of life. You know, one can be a banker and a lawyer, and the other can be something else. But when you mix together, it doesn't really matter. So that service in the military really gets you to be involved and engaged in the society much more, thanks to the service. Now, when we got to Israel, we came to a small town that is called Yokneam. And the reason I mention that, I think it will resonate with you, because you are, some of you are already part of the history, so to speak, just as myself, that I wasn't born in the Soviet Union. A small town called Yokneam. 1990, I come there from Moscow, 10 million residents. That small town, 7,000 residents. It's near Haifa, near Zichron Yaakov. And it's a one-factory town. Right, one factory town. There's a very big factory. It's called Soltam, and they produce kitchen utensils, like pots, pans, and that kind of. And also that's above the ground, but underground they produce ammunition, or at least they used to. And one of their biggest customers, until the end of the 70s, was the regime of Shah, Iran. Iran was one of the biggest customers. Now, and the entire town works in the factory. So the men are at the assembly line. I'm talking about the 50s, 60s, and 70s. The women at the administration. There's one school, a trade school in the town. They train the young kids to go work at the assembly line. And then the Iran Revolution, and Shah is out of the country. And this town, this plant and the town, they lose their one major customer. And through the 80s, they go through bankruptcy. And by the end of the 80s, the mayor, back then, he heard about high-tech. That's a new word back then. We're talking about the 80s. And he invited high-tech companies to establish their business in Yokneam without any taxation. So just draw business in. And since then, This is one of the most blossoming town in the north. We call it the high-tech capital of the north. And that little story that I told you, this is really the Israel in a nutshell. So it's humble beginnings, low tech, and then this spirit of innovation that propels you into the new age. And in this town, interestingly enough, we have immigrants from all over the world, just like they're everywhere in Israel, and we also have immigrants from Russia. Is it still me? Am I touching something? Okay, so this story for me really symbolizes what Israel is about. Now, I'm here, as I told you, I'm here for 3 years, and my job is to bring Israel to this community. Of course, there are many ways to do that. I'm connecting all local Jewish schools to Israeli schools, like they used to have pen pals, but now it's much more elaborate with internet and everything. So all of the local Jewish schools, day schools and congregationals will be connected and already are connected with Israeli schools. So the kids are corresponding directly. That's very important. I'm revived the good tradition of doing Yom HaZikaron events and Yom HaAtzmaut events in this community. A lot of speaking engagement opportunities, working with the camp. So really, I also have a YouTube channel about my experience here. This is what I do in a nutshell. Now, look, this is a big. Israel is a big theme. So I would really like to invite you to maybe ask questions and kind of guide me through what you're interested in. I mean, I can talk about the military, I can talk about the elections. Sure.
What about how does Israel view the Jews who are not part of Israel, like the people of the United States? What are their feelings currently? I mean, if you can generalize, I'd like to know more about that.
So Israelis, when you ask a typical Israeli, when you have a conversation, you as an American would have a conversation with a typical Israeli, one of the first things that they will suggest is that for you to make an aliyah. Not because they believe that everybody should stand up and go, but Israelis really believe that Israel is the homeland of the Jewish people and everybody is invited. Also, 90% of the Israelis either themselves made in Aliyah or they're second or third generation. So we're all nation of immigrants, really nation of immigrants. Now, the majority of the Israelis, they're not really aware of the differences between Orthodox, about the existence of reform and conservative movements, let's say. Israeli society is, to a great extent, if we're talking about religion, it's the Orthodox stream, right? For instance, that town that I mentioned, Yokneam, it's not a religious town. We have some religious people. It's not a religious town. Nevertheless, we have 25 synagogues, 25,000 residents, 25 synagogues. Of course, in Israel, a synagogue is not a congregation. It's really a place where you daven. But you have 25 synagogues, and all of them are Orthodox. I mean, we don't even call them Orthodox because that's what it is. Now, in recent decade, I would say, the Israelis got to hear about the existence of reform and conservative movements, and Israelis are not very trusting, so to speak, because even Israelis who are not religious, like myself, I would say it's about 40-50% of the Israelis, the synagogue they don't go to is an Orthodox one. So that's what they know. I'll just give you an example. I have a friend whose father is Jewish and mother is not. She's Russian, and she really wanted to have a Jewish marriage. Okay, now it's impossible in Israel. If you're not Jewish, you can't have. We don't have civic marriages. It's only through the rabbinate. Now she still wants to do it. There are ways to get registered, but she wants the ceremony. She wants a chuppah. So she knows that I'm a Jewish professional. So she comes to me and she asks me if I know any rabbis, any reform rabbis. And I say, yeah, sure. I mean, there are reform and conservative rabbis in Israel, of course. And I said, yeah, sure, I do know. And she asked me, Can you make sure, though, that he has a beard? So she's okay with him being reformed, but she still wants the Orthodox looks, so to speak, the Orthodox experience or appearance. So that summarizes Israelis to a larger extent. I know that it made waves here. The whole conservative reform representation at the Western Wall. Most of you, I think, are familiar with that. But most Israelis, they don't really understand, and they don't really care, because for them the Western Wall, this is just a place where you get and pray. Most of the Israelis are not even aware that this is an Orthodox place, because for them you can just come and pray.
So the Western Wall, as you might have heard, there's an issue of allocating a special section of the Western Wall to reform and conservative movements. Now, there was supposed to be an agreement between the State of Israel and the Jewish Agency, indeed, to allocate that space. That agreement was sabotaged last moment by the rabbinate, because in terms of Orthodox approach, the Western Wall is like a synagogue, and the synagogue is an Orthodox synagogue. Now, I have to say, first of all, if you're Reform or conservative or not Jewish, you can still come to the Western Wall. I mean, you don't have to practice it in the Orthodox way. You can just go there and do your thing. And there is indeed existing section for conservative and reform movements. It's the same wall, like it's the same Western Wall, just on the other side. It's not properly signed. I mean, you don't see the signs, and you don't see, it's outside of the guarded area, but it's still part of the Western Wall. No, it's not visually. It doesn't seem like it's part of that part of the Western Wall, but nevertheless, it is part of it. So look, I'm a secular Jew, but I want to understand my Orthodox brothers and sisters, and from their standpoint, and they're hard believers. From their standpoint, the Western Wall is a synagogue, and in the synagogue we do not mix men and women, and we do not do other things. We can, of course, argue with that, don't agree with that, but that's how the majority of the religious and not religious citizens feel. Definitely not all of them. There's definitely a new movement of recognizing and growing reform and conservative movement in Israel, but the majority of the Israelis, they're still on the Orthodox side, religious or not religious.
Even on the Arab side.
Well, the Arab side is definitely Orthodox. There are no...
What's the status of the Orthodox being exempt from the military?
So we don't really know the numbers, but I would say some tens of thousands of yeshiva goers, Orthodox yeshiva goers, the Haredi Jews, they're not being drafted to the military, certainly not the girls. And for some Israelis, this is a very important issue. I mean, I would even say for me it should be an issue because I served in the military. I continue serving in the military. I've been volunteering in the military, so why it's not fair? Why would I, risk my life? Why would I go through all that? And my wife too, by the way. And why they should be exempt. Now, I say, yes, it's not fair, but the state in which the state of Israel is now, I would say that objectively, that's not the pressing matter. We have other issues to attend to. And although it is not fair, I would say that we really have other issues to deal with, such as our security situation, economy, and the very notion of the Jewish state, of how Jewish the state of Israel should be. And I think that questions fall there. How Jewish the state of Israel should be. I mean, here, for most Americans, they don't experience that through their life in America, because in America by definition is not a Jewish state, it's not a Christian state, And it's not a Muslim state, it's not any state, it's just state of citizens. So the religion and the state are separated, and that's a very, it's almost a sacred principle. Most of the countries are not like America. In Japan, there are Japanese people and Japanese culture. So in Poland, so in Israel, or at least we would like to think that. Israel is a Jewish state, and then there is a question, how Jewish it should be. So the range would be, on the one side, complete separation of the state and religion, and on the other side would be halachic law, or the Jewish law. And this is really a battleground between many Israelis. Where should that not be on that range?
Please. Historically, since its inception, the Court of Israel has been a bipartisan factor in country politics, meaning that both Democrats and Republicans have supported it. Is there any fear in Israel that Prime Minister Netanyahu's actions might be threatening that bipartisanship in the United States? Some of his actions have seemed to be one of meddling in United States politics. And that may affect, some people have thought that may have an effect on the bipartisanism that exists before.
I would say that the answer to that would depend where you stand politically. So if you're on the left, the Israelis who are on the left would say, yes, definitely the actions of our government definitely threaten that fragile balance of bipartisanship treatment of Israel. And there is something to that, but I would say something like this. Both here in America and in Israel, and maybe in the entire Western world, the right and the left, the positions of the right and the left, they're really crystallized now. Everybody, the people on the left are really on the left, and people on the right are really on the right. I mean, think about it. For instance, here in America, the issue of abortion. There used to be many Republicans who were pro-abortion. It's inconceivable nowadays and age, because I feel that both in Israel and in America, both sides really consolidated in their ideological beliefs. So the bipartisanship, we still would like to argue that Israel is one of the issues in the American politics that should be, and to some extent is, bipartisan. I definitely felt that in the AIPAC, at the AIPAC policy conference that I visited last year. Yes, we're sensing that it's shifting to the right, that support is more on the right, more on the Republican part. Whether Israel's actions are, shaking that balance, maybe, but then again, you have to act upon what you believe, and you have to act upon what is right, and not necessarily what is politically pragmatical. And we see with the recent lack of support on the Democratic Party, at least some parts of it, it is really frustrating for us Israelis, because we usually also tend to think in these terms that the support for Israel should be bipartisan.
I wanted to ask you, I've been to Israel, I visited, and I'm a Reformed Jew growing up. They would consider me a Gentile, and they grew up Reformed. I know. But the question is, I'm interested in your personal history. When you came from Russia, Russia's considered agnostic. A lot of Jews gave up their identity there to blend so they would survive. How did your faith, now you're in the United States and you're working for the Federation, and how did you keep your beliefs? How did you keep the strength of being a Jew and being a proud Jew that you are now? Why did you lose it in Russia? What are your personal, your family hid and prayed for you?
Yes, that's a great question. How you not lose your Jewishness when you don't know how to be Jewish? Russia or Soviet Union, it wasn't an agnostic state, it was an atheist state, and they really succeeded in that, by the way, in the 80s. I remember growing up as a kid in the 80s in the Soviet Union. We were aware of God, but it wasn't an issue really. We knew that some people might believe, but that's really not an issue. There wasn't even a battle. It was already a fact that there is no God and we shouldn't even deal with that. Now, when I try to remember, so how come I'm still feel Jewish and I still feel connected? So first of all, my grandparents, and the entire generation of my grandparents, they did a few very smart things of how you pass that Jewish tradition without actually showing you how to practice it. So for instance, I remember that every weekend we would assemble as a family, big gathering, every weekend. Remind you of anything?
Shabbat.
It's a Shabbat. Russians don't do that on a weekly basis. We were never, no candles, no prayers, no kiddush, just, assembling together and arguing. Okay, that's also a Jewish thing. And, when you make a toast, they would interrupt you, of course, in the middle. So that's, I remember that come spring, the matzahs would appear at our home. I don't really know why. I mean, we never celebrated Pesach, but the matzah would be there. Somewhere they got it. Also in the spring, we would eat a dairy soup, milk soup. It's a Eastern European thing, but it would come only in the spring. Why? Shavuot, the dairy. Also, I remember my grandfather once drew me a letter bet. Okay, and he whispered me, well, this is a Hebrew letter bet, and I still wonder until today why it was bet and not Aleph, the first letter of the alphabet. Maybe because of the Bereshit. And the very notion of being Jewish, that I didn't realize that thanks to my parents. It's actually my kindergarten teacher told me that. I remember I was 4 or 5 years old. We would sit in the circle, and the kindergarten teacher would ask us, well, stand up, say your name, and say your ethnicity, or nationality as they call it. So it's a nice activity because the Soviet Union is the homeland of 200 different peoples, and there's a brotherhood of all these nations. Of course, once it's collapsed, everybody was in war with each other. But they would sit in the circle, so a kid would stand up and say, well, my name is Vanya, and I'm Russian, and my name is Katya, and I'm Ukrainian. And when my turn came, I wasn't really sure who I was, but I knew that I wasn't one of them. That I knew. And I said, well, my name is Arkady, and I'm a Muscovite, as in, resident of Moscow. But the kindergarten teacher, she told me, no, we have a roster here, and it says that you're Jewish, because in the Soviet Union, the Brotherhood of Nations, in your ID card, the notorious fifth paragraph would state who you are in terms of your ethnicity. So she said, no, you're Jewish, and I, come back home, and I asked my mom. So the kindergarten teacher, she told me that I was Jewish. What does it mean? And I remember that moment quite vividly because she was washing dishes, so she was standing with her back to me, and then she suddenly turns, like I asked something important, and she said, well, it means that you have to be proud. You have to be proud. So she couldn't verbalize it in terms of values and traditions, but that's the general sense that we got from that generation. And I carried that pride through growing up in the Soviet Union, and then of course coming to Israel. Of course in Israel, it's very easy to be Jewish. You don't really need to make an effort to be Jewish in Israel. And this is one of the reasons why those who are secular in Israel, they can preserve their Jewishness. You're surrounded by Jewish. There is a Jewish calendar. We live by a Jewish calendar. You wake up on Shabbat morning, like yesterday on Shabbat morning, you open a window, you see that this is a Shabbat. Don't need a calendar to tell you that this is Shabbat. It's just a different pace, different everything. Less noise, less cars, just different atmosphere. So you're surrounded by Hebrew, of course. So it's easy. And I have to tell you, to some extent, that easiness, I also sense it here in this particular community, in southern New Jersey. Because I live, you said that I came from afar. Indeed, I came from Voorhees. It took me 7 minutes to get here. And on my way, I turn left, I see the Mekor Shalom. And then after a couple of minutes, I'm at Bethel. And then there's Chabad. And then there's Temple Beth Shalom and JCC, Federation, Torah Links, Temple Emmanuel. that kosher section at ShopRite. I mean, we're surrounded by Jewishness to some extent, just like in Israel. And I see the teens who grow up here. They're so, especially compared to many other communities. I've never been a Shaliach, but I worked with many Jewish communities in North America. I see these teens that they're really aware of their Jewishness, because to some extent it's easy, but then they hit the college, and it's a completely different state of mind. On the college, they encounter BDS, they encounter protest, and sometimes they go like this. And I don't really want them to go like this, because they're already accustomed to that Jewish bubble that surrounds them, that's certainly non-existent on the campus. So one of the things that I'm doing here and opening a program that is called Ambassadors IL, and we're giving tools to the kids of how to stand strong and to stand your ground in the face of these attacks on campuses. It's of course knowledge. They will go to AIPAC. They will lobby the Congress. So it's for the teens. It's a little bit prolonged answer of how you preserve your Judaism, but that's what got me here.
Crazy question.
Speak loud.
I've given many thoughts. Now, I've been to Israel, and I know about birthright, and I've given a thought. In today's day and age in the United States, not our generation, but the next generation below us, they've sort of split on Israel, and that the Palestinians, we're not giving them, and we're robbing them, and this and that, and they don't see a clear picture. Part of the problem that I see with birthright is that birthright only goes up to a certain age. And once they reach 20, 21 or whatever.
No, it's 26.
They extended it.
Or they extend it. But I think the population, the Jewish population, in their 30s and 40s, these kids are paying college loans back. They can't afford to go to Israel. And these are the people that are voting, and these are the people that are voting against Israel and going with the Democratic Party, okay, and supporting the two-state solution and all this. And I think that by opening their eyes and giving these people a chance to go to Israel and see what really goes on in Israel, that maybe birthright should extend the age to the mid-population and get these people in.
Yes.
Well, the question is, can birthright, extend the age?
Right. I would even say that maybe we should invest first and foremost in the demographics, because they're raising kids, so we are influencing both them and their kids. Look, birthright is an ingenious endeavor, also a very expensive one. And it's sponsored by the State of Israel, by private donors, and by the Jewish Agency. It's always like everything in the Jewish world. You have to prioritize. Now, birthright is indeed a wonderful experience. There is nothing like going to Israel. I mean, you can bring as articulate shaliach as you can, but when you actually go to Israel, you don't need a shaliach. You just understand it. You understand that it's not an apartheid state. You don't need me to say that. You just go in the streets and you see that. You see Arab policemen. You see Arab Knesset members. Like a year ago, I had an accident, a car accident, and the insurance company sued me. So we went to a court, and the judge was a Muslim judge. So to call it an apartheid state is just ridiculous, just not there. So yes, birthright. I think we should cut so many other programs and definitely extend that range. And I know that also efforts are made to, not on a national level, but many federations, they actually do organize birthright for adults, birthright for intermarried couples, so there are spin-off programs from that. I'm sorry, there was a gentleman that wanted to ask.
I'm going to take that question and then Dave Wynn, and then we're going to wrap it up. I'm sure Arkady will be around after the meeting.
Use the mic.
The United States has freedom of religion, Israel has freedom of orthodoxy, and the other groups, conservative, reform, Muslim, etc., and even women are, I guess, considered below that. What is the consequence between orthodoxy and the government on who runs the country?
Who runs the country, whether the Orthodox run the country. Look, because you're an American, you separate the religion and state not only in terms of the constitution, but also in terms of state of mind. In Israel, the orthodoxy and the state are one. They're inseparable, just like the military, by the way. Here in the United States, many people support the military. Some don't. But in Israel, it's not a separate organization. Military is just what we are. When I go to the military once a year, my kids will go, my wife went, so we're all military. To the same extent, we're all Orthodox establishment, even if we're not believers. Now, of course, there's a lot of criticism, but it's just intertwined. Yes, I do believe that some of the powers that the rabbinical establishment has gained, yes, it needs to be diminished. But you know, you ask sometimes. I don't know if you know that, but you can't get married. I think I mentioned that you can't get married in Israel if you are outside of the rabbinate, right? If one of your parents, if your mother is not Jewish, you simply cannot get married. And actually, there is a really awkward situation with the Russian-speaking Jews in Israel, who I would say 1 million Jews came from former Soviet Union, and some say 200,000, some say 300,000 of them are only half Jewish, and some of them are half Jewish on the wrong side, not on the mother's side. So they serve in the military. Some of them are even born in Israel. They serve in the military. You know, they're Israelis. They pay taxes. They go to Miluim, whatnot. But then they discover when they come of age to get married, they discover that they cannot. There's simply no way to get married in Israel if you're not Jewish. Now, it's obviously a problem, and you can have a lot of critique toward the rabbinical establishment. But then again, if you hear them, look, I'm a Shaliach, I'm a diplomat, so I have to show you both sides. When you ask an Orthodox person, not only an Orthodox rabbi, an Orthodox person, they say, look, for us, it is very, very important to get married Jewishly. I mean, you know that some of them, they say sit shiva on kids who get married outside of Judaism. So it's very important for us. So how do we keep track of that? If we just give that to the state, how do we keep track of that? So this is something that we need to deal with. Of course, if you're an American, so you would say, well, why does state have to interfere with that? State and marriage, it should be two separate instances, just like with state and religion. But in Israel, because it's a Jewish state, it's still an open question of how Jewish it should be, how the religion should be separated from the state.
Dave.
Okay, let's finish with geopolitics. Sure. How strong is this new partnership with Saudi Arabia? And how strong is the relationship with Jordan and Egypt on one hand? And what do you think about what's happening with Iran right now that's acting up? And how do you think that'll affect Israel?
The strength is growing. It's growing undercover. They don't publicize many of the partnerships that were created in the recent decade. We have shared enemy, and Iran, as you mentioned, and for many in the Muslim world, they just grow tired of the whole Palestinian issue, because frankly they have much more pressing issues, even on the, not just with Iran, but also what is going on in Syria. It's the Muslims who are slaughtering Muslims. That's the problem of the Muslim world, and not so much the Israelis, and many in the Muslim world realize that. Now, as it comes to Iran, I think our partnership with many Muslim countries is growing, and so is with that country and with that administration on that regard. And I have to say that, as an Israeli, not as an American. It's not from the Israeli standpoint. The partnership that we have with the current administration is the best. I mean, we've never seen something like that. I mean, that's a very narrow point of view, I'm telling you. For Israelis, it is highly important that the embassy was moved to Jerusalem. It is highly important that the deal with Iran was dismantled, and so many other things. And the Golan Heights, of course, were recognized. I'm completely disregarding the American angle here, but from our Israeli standpoint, current administration is the best administration that we have experienced so far. But this is our very narrow standpoint.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So before we finish up with Arkady, I have a couple quick announcements. One, there was a question. Okay. Yeah, no, I got it. Okay. There was a question about how we can interact with you when you're not here. Do you have an office here, or
Yes.
here and there?
Yes, I sit here at the Federation. I have an office. You know, have an email, have my business card, so I'm here. You can find me online, of course. I also have a YouTube channel, as I mentioned, that is called The Shaliach Show. So you can track my adventures. The Shaliach Show.
Do you have the 5-story mansion that the little girl in Korea has? She has, I don't know, 20 million followers. She's 6 years old. Her parents just built a 5-story mansion. Not yet.
I'm a different generation.
Next week. The other thing that I wanted to mention was our Torch Award. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Mike Perloff and I were at National Convention or International Convention in Toronto. Mike put together a Torch Award presentation, and we received a Torch Award for all of our basic activities that we do, driving people around, building the sukkah, all the community activities that we do. And it's from the Federation of Jewish Men's Club that we're a member of. It's a silver one, and it's for South Jersey Men's Club 2017-2019. Non-SJMC program. It's not one of the international programs, it's our own program. Mike, anything that you need to add? The other thing is, don't forget our books and our toiletries together. Our books and our toiletries, bring them in when you have a chance.
And the food.
And the food, kosher food, please.
For what?
One more second.
Kosher food for what?
For the food bank. So we'd like to present you with a certificate of appreciation, guest speaker, and please come back to visit us at a future breakfast if you're around and you're so inclined.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I think that, anything else? Oh, what? But I'm just learning. Give us one more second. Hold on. Unless you don't want to stand, you want to come up? Arkady, we need you one more minute. I'm forgetting our. We need to pick a winner. The amount of the $53, the winning amount for our 50-50 raffle. Read the last 3 numbers.
And the winner is
Last 3 numbers.
623. 623. 623.
Ed Silver.
Oh, really?